Chapter 20 of Julia Ried. Julia Ried by Pansy. Chapter 20, in which are some searching questions. The meeting was one of marked interest. I felt thrilled and solemnized, felt also a great longing after that rest and peace and joy of which several spoke with great earnestness. I think this was one among the many mistakes of my life at that time. I went about searching for the rest and peace and joy, never realizing that to one who was faithfully and patiently lifting her cross, they came without being looked after. "Was it not a precious meeting?" Abbie said, as we walked homeward. "Didn't you enjoy it?" She asked the question, not of me, but of Mr. Sayles. He answered in a very amused tone: "I really cannot say that I did, particularly." "Oh, didn't you? I am so sorry. What was the trouble?" "The trouble was with me, I suspect. Miserable sinner that I am. I failed to get into the spirit of the affair." Abbie raised her eyes to his face, and gave him a surprised, sad look. In the glow of the moonlight, her face seemed to me that of an angel. "Do you mean that you are not a Christian?" she asked, after a moment's silence, in low tones. He seemed excessively amused. It was with difficulty that he restrained an absolute laugh. I felt greatly provoked with him, and a little bit so with Abbie. It seemed to me a decided case of casting pearls before swine. "It must be the first time that anyone ever imagined for a moment that you had a serious thought on that subject, or any other," I said, tartly. "I don't wonder that you are amused." He laughed with his usual careless good nature, made some light remark about the meeting not having improved my manner of speech, then bent his head toward Abbie, and said gently: "You seem surprised." "I am," she answered, still sadly. "I surely thought that you were a Christian." "May I ask why?" "Oh, I hardly know. You seemed such friends, all of you, Mrs. Tyndall and the doctor and all. I thought of course that bond united you." He was grave enough now. "I wish it did," he said, earnestly, and then we were at home, and he left me wondering whether he really wished any such thing. It seemed very unlike him, and yet it was the first grave sentence that I had ever heard from his lips on the subject. Abbie went directly to Mrs. Tyndall's side, nestled, indeed, on the low ottoman in front of her, and said: "You should have gone tonight. It was a precious meeting. Are you not able to go out in the evenings? What a deprivation it must be to you." With a person sitting opposite to her, who knew that she had been out to a concert, or lecture, or shopping, 4 evenings in succession, it would hardly do to leave this supposition unexplained; so she answered frankly: "Oh, yes, I am able. But the fact is, my dear child, I am older than you, and of course haven't your delightful enthusiasm." Such a commencement as that had puzzled me once, and it irritated me nowadays. I had been wont to answer it with wondering silence, until of late I was given to turning from her with a disgusted frown. Abbie asked, simply and sweetly: "What has enthusiasm to do with going to prayer meeting, Mrs. Tyndall?" "A great deal, my dear. Indeed, I fear that in the minds of many people there is nothing left of the meeting but enthusiasm. The fact is, my dear, I do not believe in religious spasms. I think them very unhealthful. How did you like our church? Don't you think the colors light up well?" "Very well. I thought the church exceedingly pretty. What are religious spasms, Mrs. Tyndall?" Mrs. Tyndall laughed. "Why, going to meeting every evening," she said at last. "A season of excitement that leaves no one better, but rather worse." "But, Mrs. Tyndall, what is excitement?" My cousin Abbie had a most remarkable talent for asking direct, close questions, and keeping persons to the point, looking at them, meantime, with great earnest, thoughtful eyes. Mrs. Tyndall nestled uneasily among the cushions. "Why, making an unnecessary commotion about a matter." "Well, but you are talking about something that is not taking place. If commotion means noise, there was none of that this evening. It was very quiet and solemn." Mrs. Tyndall laid her hand on my cousin's arm, and spoke with winning sweetness, but in a tone calculated to check all further discussion. "My dear, I don't quarrel with other people's fancies in the least. They may go to prayer meeting every night in the 365, if they are so disposed. But, personally, I don't like religious fanaticism. Julia, was Mr. Sayles out tonight?" "Yes, ma'am," I answered briefly, and Abbie asked, in her most gentle tone: Mrs. Tyndall, won't you please tell me what religious fanaticism is?" I think it at last became evident to Mrs. Tyndall's mind that she must give a direct and definite answer to Abbie's questionings, or else definitely decline to do so. "I think," she said, speaking slowly and with dignity, "I think that the getting up of special meetings at a certain season of the year, and insisting that at that particular time people must desert their other employments and duties, and go to church all the time, is fanaticism. I want my religion to be an everyday affair, and not something to put on during a few weeks in the winter." "But, Mrs. Tyndall, do you reason in that way about other matters? Don't we take advantage of the season of comparative leisure to get up lectures, and concerts, and benevolent associations? Why should we not use the same wisdom in trying to reach the religious nature of people?" "Excitement isn't religion," Mrs. Tyndall said, with that delicious disregard for logic that people of that temperament are apt to exhibit. Abbie replied with great calmness: "No, certainly it isn't, and excitement isn't music either, and yet I never heard people object to a reasonable amount of enthusiasm over some exquisite rendering of a beautiful song, for instance. Don't you think that we are a little bit too much afraid of a religious excitement, when we consider excitements over common matters perfectly correct and reasonable? What do you think excitement is, anyway, Mrs. Tyndall?" Mrs. Tyndall laughed pleasantly. "How like a moving dictionary you treat me," she said gaily. "Why, I think excitement is excitement, don't you?" And Abbie laid her hand on the lady's arm with a winning, caressing movement, and said gently: "No, but seriously, please." "Well, of course I mean by excitement extreme interest in any matter, interest carried to an improper degree." "And what degree of interest do you think is proper in regard to religious matters? When does it become extreme?" The answer was a very cautious one. "Of course there can not be too great a degree of interest, but there can be an injudicious expression of it." "And do you think prayer meetings injudicious?" "Why, no, of course not, but—" And then there really seemed to be nothing further to say. Abbie waited a little, and then spoke in a very earnest tone: "Don't you think we sometimes amaze our unconverted friends by no expression at all of, or interest in, religion, or in them spiritually? How strange it would seem if your husband lay dying in the room above, and you sat here chatting with us, and suppressing all unseemly interest in him." "The cases are not analogous," Mrs. Tyndall said quickly. "If he lay dying, the danger would be immediate and certain." "How can we ever be sure how near and how certain it is in regard to the never dying souls?" Abbie's voice was very low and tender, but so solemnly in earnest, and for the first time since I had known her, Mrs. Tyndall responded only by silence. The door was no sooner closed upon us in our room than I commenced at once: "I am glad you have learned something already of Mrs. Tyndall's peculiar views. She has had a great many of them. I have been dreadfully deceived and misled by her. I am sure I didn't want you to be. How did she impress you?" "As a woman for whom we ought to pray," Abbie answered, so gently and earnestly that for a moment my volubility was checked. I rallied, however. "You may well think so. If you knew as much about her as I do!" And immediately I launched forth into the history of my acquaintance with her, from the time of my coming to her house to board up to that date. She received the history in absolute silence, and at last, to break it, I had to assail her with a question: "Did you ever hear of such a woman in your life?" Her answer was very gentle: "Dear Julia, I presume the Saviour has. He bears with all classes of Christians." "I don't believe she's a Christian at all," I said stoutly. "I think she is a hypocrite, if there ever was one." I am always so very thankful that we not only have not to judge of people's conduct, but are absolutely forbidden to do so. Dear Julia, I think it is harder to pray for any one toward whom we harbor such thoughts. Don't you?" "She doesn't think she has any need for anybody's prayers. She thinks she is perfection." "Do you pray for her, Julia?" "No." I frankly admitted that I had never prayed for her in my life. "I can't," I added bitterly. "I know I don't feel right toward her, and I can not. Oh, Abbie, if you only knew what I have to thank her for." Whereupon I told her, with many bitter tears, that sad story of the festival, to which I would never have gone but for her, and how I thereby lost that last kiss from my mother, for which my heart would always ache. I told the story truthfully, I thought. I know now that it was strangely colored by my bitter feelings. Indeed, Abbie's first sentence showed it to me in part. Poor child, poor darling child! And you could not decide which was right, whether to go or stay? Did no one advise with you? Did you pray about it very earnestly, Julia? I was silent and dumbfounded. No one to advise with me! What if she had heard Dr. Douglas's pleading and Dr. Mulford's earnest words? I distinctly remember that I had not at any time felt the least doubt as to which was the strictly right thing to do. "No," I said at last, speaking more humbly than I had before. "No, I didn't pray about it at all." "How could you have expected to do right?" she asked me, softening the words with a loving caress and tender kisses. "Do you pray about every little thing?" I questioned abruptly, and she answered me with brightening eyes and smiling lips, as if there was a wellspring of joy in the words. "For the very hairs of your head are all numbered." She changed the subject after that suddenly and brightly. "This does so remind me of Esther's and my first evening together. Only we were wicked that night, very wicked. I was, at least. I talked to her until after 1 o'clock. But, you see, I had so many things to ask her about, Aunt Laura and all of you." "You will have no mother to ask me about," I answered, mournfully, with the ever ready rush of tears. She turned toward me with wondering eyes, and spoke wonderingly. "Why not? Don't you like to talk about your mother? You have had no one, though, to talk with. But you will like to tell me all about her, will you not? Because, you know, I love her too. Oh, I have looked forward to nice talks with you about Aunt Laura." Again as I listened to her, there stole over me that strange, sweet feeling that, after all, mother was my mother still, even though God had given her a better home. Abbie said, "I love her too," not "I loved her," as so many say. Then I need not cease to love my mother. I brought my chair and nestled beside her. "You talk differently from other people," I said frankly. "Everybody else acts as though mother was utterly gone out of existence, and when they speak of her, they speak of one who has lived, but doesn't any more." "I know," she said gently. "We all talk like unbelievers in one of the most blessed truths of our religion. But that doesn't make it any less certain that our Christian friends who have gone from us are surely living and loving, and waiting for us in heaven." "Does it always seem real to you?" I asked wistfully. "I would give anything to realize it, as you seem to. Sometimes it seems to me that mother is in the grave, and that heaven is a misty dream. Do you never feel that way?" She answered me with a bright smile, and an emphatic shake of her head. "No, my heaven seems very near and dear. It is to me as if my friends who are living there had told me good bye, and gone away to Europe to live, and were expecting me to come out there to them in a little while." "But the letters," I said hesitatingly, half feeling as though I ought not to speak of so material a thing in connection with the dead. "If they were in Europe, we should be watching for their letters, and expecting them by every steamer. But now it is such a long, long silence. If we could only hear from them." She answered me in that bright voice of hers which had such a wonderful ring of joy in it. "And the anxieties and fears lest they may be ill, or in danger, or heavy trouble, what has become of all these? And God himself has written us such wonderful letters about their home." This was a stretch of faith and love and hope to which I could not reach. But I longed for it, my very soul cried out after it. As I laid my head on my pillow that night, I inwardly resolved that I would have it, that I would watch her life, and discover if I could from what source she drew her wellspring of joy and hope. End of Chapter 20. Recording by Trisha G.